GhastlyGarlic Episode 27. Haunted Airbnb Nightmare, the entity that won't let go. Chapter 1, The Invitation. Erica stared at the invitation in her hand, the gold lettering glinting under the dim light of her apartment. It was from her cousin, Luke, who she hadn't seen in years. The last time they met was at a family reunion, where they shared stories of their childhood and laughed over forgotten memories. Now, Luke was inviting her to a gathering in a quiet neighborhood just off a busy street, near a large shopping center. The location seemed familiar, and she remembered the area from her college days in the city. The Airbnb they had rented was one of those old stone bungalows, common in the pre-war era, surrounded by sprawling parks and greenery. Luke's message promised a few nights of relaxation, fun, and catching up. Erica was looking forward to it. She needed a break from her monotonous routine and the recent breakup that still stung. On the first night, Erica arrived with her boyfriend, Jake. Luke, his girlfriend MIA, and their friends were already there. The house was quaint and charming, but something about it felt off. Maybe it was the way the shadows clung to the corners, or how the air felt heavy despite the open windows. Erica brushed it off as exhaustion from the drive. As the night progressed, they played games, drank, and reminisced about old times. While Luke and MIA were out grabbing more supplies, Erica stood in the kitchen with Jake and MIA's friend, Ben. They were laughing about something when Erica's heart nearly stopped. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a leg, suspended in midair, as if someone was mid-step. She turned quickly, but nothing was there. Just as she was about to mention it, the overhead light started flickering. Jake and Ben exchanged nervous laughs, but no one said anything. The night ended without further incident, but Erica couldn't shake the image of that leg. The next morning, she brought coffee and breakfast for everyone. Despite the bright sunny day, the house felt oppressively cold and dark. It made her skin crawl. She suggested sitting on the porch, but Luke and MIA declined. They seemed unnaturally fixated on staying inside. Erica noticed her eyes kept darting to the hallway between the kitchen and bedrooms. It was the same hallway where she saw the apparition. Nothing happened, but the uneasy feeling lingered. Luke and MIA seemed tired and withdrawn, a stark contrast to their usual bubbly selves. When Erica asked if they were okay, they blamed it on fatigue. That evening, they all gathered at Erica's condo. The change in environment seemed to lift everyone's spirits a bit, but the underlying tension was still palpable. Luke finally opened up about the house. He said they never felt comfortable there. MIA mentioned the eerie quiet of the neighborhood and the overgrown lawns of nearby homes. They both felt a sense of anger emanating from the house, causing them to bicker and argue, something they rarely did. MIA recounted a strange experience she had the previous night. She found herself wandering the house in the dark, unable to sleep, and felt an overwhelming sense of being watched. They were so unnerved that they decided not to spend another night there. Erica and Jake offered them to stay at their place, and they gratefully accepted. At 2:30 a.m., Erica and Jake drove Luke and MIA back to the Airbnb to pack their things. The house felt unnaturally still, both inside and out. While they packed, Erica stayed in the kitchen, clearing out the fridge. Suddenly, she heard a faint, demonic scream. It sounded otherworldly, like a scream piercing through from another dimension. MIA didn't hear it, but Erica was certain of what she heard. They hurriedly packed and left the house. On their way back, they saw a strange animal prancing across the street. It looked like a shaved deer, eerie and unsettling at that hour. Luke took it as a sign that whatever was haunting them was left behind. They stayed up until dawn, sharing their experiences. The consensus was that the entity in the house had a particular disdain for women, as Erica and MIA had the most encounters. MIA mentioned how she struggled to unlock the door initially, but her brother managed to do it effortlessly. This seemed to solidify their theory. The next day, Erica tried to find any information about the house or the street, but came up empty-handed. She felt drained, not just from the weekend's activities, but from the oppressive energy of the house. Whatever happened there, she was certain it was malevolent. And though her cousins had left, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching her. Chapter 2, The Unraveling. Back in her apartment, Erica couldn't focus. The events of the weekend replayed in her mind like a broken record. She kept seeing that leg, hearing that scream, feeling that presence. Even in her own home, she felt uneasy. The shadows seemed darker, the silence more oppressive. A few days later, Erica received a frantic call from MIA. She was crying, her voice shaking. "Erica, something followed us. I don't know what to do." Erica's blood ran cold. She could hear the fear in MIA's voice. "Calm down, MIA. Tell me what's happening." MIA explained that ever since they returned, strange things started happening in their apartment. Objects moved on their own, they heard whispers in the night, and she felt a constant sense of being watched. Luke tried to stay strong, but even he was on edge. They were both exhausted and terrified. Erica decided to visit them, hoping to help. She arrived at their apartment and was immediately struck by the same oppressive feeling she experienced at the Airbnb. It was as if the darkness from that house had latched onto them. They sat in the living room, discussing what to do next. MIA mentioned a local historian who might know more about the Airbnb's history. They decided to visit him the next day. The historian's office was cluttered with old books and documents. He was an elderly man with a deep knowledge of the city's history. When they mentioned the address of the Airbnb, his expression darkened. "That house has a tragic history," he said. "During the pre-war era, a man lived there with his family. He was abusive, particularly towards his wife and daughter. One night, in a fit of rage, he killed them both and then himself. Since then, the house has been shrouded in dark energy. Many who lived there reported strange occurrences, but nothing was ever proven." Erica felt a chill run down her spine. The pieces were falling into place. The malevolent presence, the targeting of women, the anger, it all made sense now. As they left the historian's office, they decided to take action. They couldn't let this entity control their lives. They contacted a local paranormal investigator, a woman named Dr. Angela Carter, who specialized in cleansing haunted spaces. Dr. Carter arrived at their apartment the following evening. She was a calm, composed woman with a deep understanding of the supernatural. She listened to their experiences and then began her work. She set up equipment to detect any paranormal activity and started a cleansing ritual. As she chanted, the air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to writhe. Suddenly, the equipment went haywire, detecting intense paranormal activity. A dark figure appeared in the corner of the room, its eyes glowing with malice. It was the man from the house, his spirit twisted by rage and hatred. Dr. Carter continued her chant, her voice steady. The entity screamed, a sound that chilled them to the bone. Slowly, the figure began to fade, its screams growing fainter until it vanished completely. The room warmed up, and the oppressive feeling lifted. Dr. Carter explained that the spirit was tied to the house and had latched onto them. The cleansing had severed that connection, but it was crucial to avoid places with dark histories in the future. Erica, Luke, and MIA were relieved, but the experience left them scarred. They couldn't forget the darkness they encountered. As they returned to their lives, they remained vigilant, wary of the unseen forces that lurk in the shadows. But Erica couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. The darkness had retreated, but it wasn't gone. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of their lives, it waited, biding its time, ready to strike again. Chapter 3: The Haunting Returns. Months passed, and life slowly returned to normal. Erica immersed herself in work, trying to forget the terrifying experiences. Luke and MIA moved to a new apartment, far from the haunted house. They seemed happier, their relationship stronger than before, but Erica couldn't shake the lingering sense of dread. One evening, while working late, Erica heard a noise in her apartment. It was faint, like a whisper, but it sent a chill down her spine. She tried to ignore it, focusing on her work, but the noise persisted. It grew louder, more insistent, until it became a low growl. Erica's heart pounded as she stood up and looked around. The apartment was dimly lit, the shadows deepening with each passing moment. She saw a figure in the corner, a dark silhouette watching her. It was the man from the house, his eyes glowing with malevolence. Panic surged through her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She reached for her phone and called Dr. Carter. "It's back," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The spirit is here." Dr. Carter arrived quickly, her face serious. She began another cleansing ritual, but this time, the entity was stronger. It resisted her chants, its growls turning into deafening roars. The air grew icy, and the shadows writhed like living creatures. Erica felt a sharp pain in her chest, as if something was trying to tear her apart from the inside. She collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. Dr. Carter's voice grew louder, more urgent, as she fought to banish the spirit. Finally, with one last, powerful chant, the entity let out a final, ear-splitting scream and vanished. The room warmed up, and the oppressive feeling lifted, but Erica was left shaken and weak. Dr. Carter helped her to the couch and explained that the entity had grown stronger, feeding off her fear and pain. It was no longer just tied to the house, it had become a part of her. The only way to truly banish it was to confront the source of its power, the house where it all began. Erica knew what she had to do. She contacted Luke and MIA, explaining the situation. Reluctantly, they agreed to return to the house with her. Dr. Carter would join them, armed with stronger rituals and protection. They arrived at the house just before dusk. The old stone bungalow looked even more foreboding in the fading light. As they entered, the air grew thick with tension. The house felt alive, pulsing with dark energy. Dr. Carter began the ritual, her chants echoing through the halls. The shadows grew darker, the air colder. The entity appeared, its form more defined and menacing. It lunged at them, but Dr. Carter stood her ground, her voice unwavering. Erica, Luke, and MIA joined hands, forming a circle around Dr. Carter. They focused on their love and strength, pushing back against the entity's rage. Slowly, the dark figure began to weaken, its form flickering like a dying flame. With one final, powerful chant, Dr. Carter banished the spirit. The entity let out a final, mournful wail and dissolved into the air. The house grew quiet, the oppressive feeling lifting completely. Exhausted but relieved, they left the house. Dr. Carter assured them that the spirit was gone for good, its connection to the living world severed. They returned to their lives, but the experience left them changed. They were stronger, more resilient, and more aware of the unseen forces that lurk in the shadows. But Erica knew that the darkness was never truly gone. It lingered on the edges of their lives, waiting for a moment of weakness. And in the quiet, dark corners of her mind, she could still hear the faint echoes of that demonic scream, a reminder that some evils can never be fully banished. As she lay in bed that night, she felt a cold breeze brush against her skin. Her eyes snapped open, and she saw a shadow in the corner of the room, watching her. The darkness had returned, and this time, it was here to stay. Chapter 4, The Return. Erica's eyes widened in terror, as the shadowy figure loomed in the corner of her bedroom. Its eyes glowed with a sinister light, and she could feel its malevolent presence growing stronger. She reached for her phone, her hands trembling, and dialed Dr. Carter's number. "Dr. Carter, it's back," she whispered, her voice quivering. "The darkness. It's here." Dr. Carter's voice was calm but urgent. "Stay where you are, Erica. I'll be there as soon as I can. Remember, you need to stay strong and not let it feed on your fear." Erica nodded, even though Dr. Carter couldn't see her. She hung up the phone and tried to steady her breathing. The figure remained in the corner, its eyes never leaving her. She felt a cold, creeping dread envelop her, but she fought to keep it at bay. Minutes felt like hours as she waited for Dr. Carter. The figure seemed to inch closer, its form shifting and twisting in the darkness. Erica's heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to let her fear take over. Finally, she heard a knock on her door. She ran to open it, relief washing over her, as she saw Dr. Carter standing there, a determined look on her face. "Erica, we need to confront this together, Dr. Carter said, stepping inside. She set up her equipment quickly, placing protective charms around the room and lighting candles to create a barrier of light. The shadowy figure hissed and recoiled as the light filled the room. Dr. Carter began chanting, her voice resonating with power. Erica stood beside her, focusing on her own strength and resilience. The figure writhed and twisted, its form becoming less defined. As Dr. Carter's chant grew louder, the figure let out a piercing scream, and Erica felt a sharp pain in her chest. She stumbled but stayed on her feet, refusing to let the entity overpower her. The room seemed to vibrate with energy as Dr. Carter's chant reached its crescendo. The shadowy figure let out one final, agonizing scream before it dissolved into nothingness. The room fell silent, the oppressive feeling lifting completely. Erica collapsed onto her bed, exhausted but relieved. Dr. Carter sat beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's gone, Erica. For now," Dr. Carter said softly, "but you need to be vigilant. This entity is strong, and it will keep trying to find a way back. Erica nodded, her mind racing. She knew that the battle wasn't over. The darkness had been banished, but it was still out there, waiting for a moment of weakness. Chapter 5: The New Normal. In the weeks that followed, Erica tried to resume her normal life. She threw herself into work, spent time with friends, and even started dating again. But the experience with the entity had left her changed. She was more cautious, always aware of the shadows that lurked in the corners of her vision. Luke and MIA were also trying to move on. They had their own apartment now, far from the haunted house, and were focused on rebuilding their lives. But they, too, felt the lingering effects of the encounter. One evening, Erica received a call from MIA. "Hey, Erica, how are you holding up?" "I'm doing okay," Erica replied, trying to sound cheerful. "How about you guys?" "We are managing," MIA said, her voice tinged with weariness. "But there's something I need to tell you. We've been having strange dreams." "About the house?" Erica's heart skipped a beat. "Dreams? What kind of dreams?" "Nightmares, really," MIA said. "We are back in the house, and the darkness is there. It's like it's calling to us, trying to pull us back." Erica felt a chill run down her spine. "Have you talked to Dr. Carter about this?" "Not yet," MIA admitted. "We didn't want to bother her. But I think we need to." "I agree," Erica said firmly. "We can't ignore this. I'll call her." That night, Erica, Luke, and MIA met with Dr. Carter. They described their nightmares in detail, and Dr. Carter listened intently. "These dreams are a sign that the entity is still trying to reach you," Dr. Carter said. "It's searching for a way back into your lives. We need to strengthen your defenses and find a way to sever its connection permanently." They agreed to perform another cleansing ritual, this time focusing on their own homes and themselves. Dr. Carter provided them with protective charms and taught them techniques to ward off negative energy. Over the next few weeks, Erica, Luke, and MIA followed Dr. Carter's instructions diligently. They performed regular cleansing rituals, kept protective charms in their homes, and practiced techniques to strengthen their mental and emotional defenses. The nightmares gradually became less frequent, and the oppressive feeling that had haunted them started to lift. But Erica knew that they could never fully let their guard down. The darkness was still out there, always searching for a way back. Chapter 6: The Final Confrontation. Months passed, and life began to feel almost normal again. Erica, Luke, and MIA had settled into their new routines, and the memories of the haunted house began to fade. But one night, Erica had a dream that felt disturbingly real. In the dream, she was back at the haunted house. The air was thick with tension, and the shadows seemed to pulse with malevolence. She walked through the darkened halls, feeling the oppressive presence growing stronger with each step. She reached the living room, where the shadowy figure stood, its eyes glowing with a sinister light. "You cannot escape me," it whispered, its voice echoing through the room. "I will always find a way back." Erica woke with a start, her heart pounding. She knew what she had to do. She called Luke and MIA, and together they contacted Dr. Carter. "We need to go back to the house," Erica said, her voice filled with determination. "We need to confront this entity once and for all." Dr. Carter agreed. "It's risky, but I think you're right. We need to face this head-on and find a way to banish it permanently." They gathered their supplies and drove to the haunted house one last time. The old stone bungalow looked as foreboding as ever, its windows dark and empty. Dr. Carter led the way, setting up her equipment and preparing for the ritual. Erica, Luke, and MIA formed a circle around her, holding hands and focusing on their shared strength. The air grew cold, and the shadows deepened as Dr. Carter began her chant. The entity appeared, its form more defined and menacing than ever. It lunged at them, but they stood their ground, pushing back with their combined will. Dr. Carter's chant grew louder, her voice resonating with power. The entity writhed and twisted, its form flickering like a dying flame. Erica, Luke, and MIA focused on their love and resilience, pushing back against the entity's rage. With one final, powerful chant, Dr. Carter banished the spirit. The entity let out a final, mournful wail and dissolved into the air. The house grew quiet, the oppressive feeling lifting completely. Exhausted but relieved, they left the house, knowing that the entity was gone for good. Dr. Carter assured them that the spirit's connection to the living world had been severed permanently. As they drove away, Erica felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in months. The darkness had been banished, and they could finally move on with their lives. But in the back of her mind, she knew that they could never fully forget the horrors they had faced. The experience had left them changed, and they would always carry the scars of that encounter. And somewhere, in the quiet, dark corners of their minds, the faint echoes of that demonic scream would always remind them that some evils can never be fully banished. Epilogue: The Lingering Shadows. Years later, Erica, Luke, and MIA had moved on with their lives. They had new jobs, new homes, and new experiences. But the memory of the haunted house remained, a dark chapter in their past that they rarely spoke of. One evening, Erica was sitting on her porch, watching the sunset. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the trees. She felt a sense of peace, a stark contrast to the turmoil of the past. But as the shadows lengthened, she felt a familiar chill. She glanced at the corner of her porch, and saw a dark figure watching her. Its eyes glowed with a sinister light, and a cold dread settled over her. "You cannot escape me," the figure whispered, its voice echoing through the air. "I will always find the way back." Erica's heart pounded in her chest, but she stood her ground. She knew that the battle against the darkness was never truly over. The entity had found a way back, and she would need to confront it once again. She reached for her phone and dialed Dr. Carter's number, her resolve unwavering. She knew that as long as she had the strength to fight, she could keep the darkness at bay. But deep down, she also knew that the shadows would always be there, lurking on the edges of her life, waiting for a moment of weakness. And in the quiet, dark corners of her mind, she could still hear the faint echoes of that demonic scream, a reminder that some evils can never be fully banished. The end.
Thanks for tuning in to our podcast. If you enjoyed our exploration of ghosts, mythical creatures, and urban legends, please share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling episodes. Until next time, my beloved listeners.